Tiny habits changed my life. I don't know if that's overstating, but I really do believe that this framework has really changed how I view myself and how I get things done. So I wanted to share that in this episode, that I really think having this framework helped me think differently about who I am and what I can do. So stick around. I'm going to get to that in a minute. If you are someone who, you've had a goal and you start strong and then you lose momentum after a few weeks, well, that was me. I would get super excited about something and then it would slowly fizzle. And if you've tried to build a habit and tried to stick with it, maybe it's working out, or maybe it's getting a project done, or whatever it is, some sort of habit, but really you just can't seem to get it to work. And then you start blaming yourself. Sometimes you get motivation, like maybe you come from a doctor's appointment and they give you, maybe your numbers aren't great. So you're like, okay, I'm going to work out. And then all of a sudden it just fizzles. We rely on motivation to keep us going. And the problem with that is that it comes and goes. And so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Tiny Habits Method, which is by Fogg, and he wrote a book about it. And it's really helped me stay consistent, especially with my health habits. And also, as I talk about it a lot, is building habits around my business and like trying to push myself to like get to do those things more consistently. And once we build the right habits, it feels so effortless that it just becomes easier to do. So it's really sticking with it and then trying to tweak it to find the right recipe. That's what Fogg calls it, the right recipe. And make sure to DM or comment if you are trying out any habits yourself or trying to build habits that you're struggling with. Love to talk about it, and I'll make sure to shout out here if there's like kind of cool stuff that people are doing. All right, so why doesn't motivation work? And why most people struggle to remain consistent? And you can't really build a habit that'll stick around something that is constantly fluctuating. When it's like, oh, I feel like I should go work out, and like you get motivated, so you go and work out, and maybe you do it for a week, and then all of a sudden you're not going to the gym the next 5, 6, 7 weeks. So you haven't quite built that habit. We tend to blame ourselves as well. And we're like, oh, we're so lazy, or I'm so lazy and I'm just not, I just don't like working out. Well, maybe it's the habit is not quite right. When we sort of rely on just willpower, it can really lead to burnout because we're putting so much stress on ourselves to make these decisions to, okay, I gotta go. And that's a lot of stress. And when we feel stress and then it compounds with other stresses, then we end up giving up and then not following through. Big goals are also very overwhelming. I think I mentioned that before, that, I have a goal of getting my glucose levels down below a certain level. And that by itself is like, it was really hard. But then I chose to figure out, okay, what's the small thing that I can do to manage that? So I kind of take it in increments, in little steps, and then figured out a particular tactic or a particular habit that could help me. I already walk every day, so I was like, well, I'm just going to put it in with that. I'm going to increase my heart rate 3 times a week in one of those walks. Let's take things that are overwhelming and kind of like narrow them down so that they're actually actionable and that we can be successful in them. And in Fogg's book, in Tiny Habits, he basically says, if you design your habits right, motivation doesn't matter. I've been successful in this with my health habits, and I'm working on utilizing kind of the same framework for my content and my business habits so that I can create content consistently. And again, consistency isn't about willpower, because that will just likely, we will fail just by using willpower. And it's really making the action so easy that we can't fail. So how does Tiny Habits make everything easier? Well, the Tiny Habits method by Fogg is basically based off of the Fogg behavior model. And I'm going to actually share a link to his website that talks about this. I'm going to read directly from his website. Basically, the simplest explanation of this is behavior happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt come together at the same time. When a behavior does not occur, at least one of those 3 elements is missing. And so again, when we think about goals, goals and, there's really no prompt and no actions, right? So we have to figure out, okay, how do we bring it down using this model so that we know what the prompt is, the ability to do it, right? So there's a way of doing it and we're able to do it, and that our motivation is at the right place where, we can make it easier to do, even though our motivation may fluctuate a little bit. I really think about this model because really what I'm doing for a habit is I need to have a behavior change. And if I have these three things and I can identify each of these three things, like let's say for my content creation, I want to create content. I need to create a prompt for when that is. So I'm using something that already exists, which is in my morning coffee. I do drink it. And then all I have to do is open my content planner because I've already planned my content. I just need to open it so that I can start thinking about what's the next thing that I need to do. And the action obviously is the opening of the book. And I know it doesn't even seem like, how does that help you? Well, that's the thing, right? Like sometimes the behavior change happens way before that goal is even there. And I start here because every day I need to understand, like, what is it that I need to do to build content? And it's in my content planner. I have built habits to plan my content. I'm building a habit now to consistently do the next step in order to create this content. And I know you're like, sounds complicated and difficult. Well, let me tell you, it's super, super easy. It just takes a lot of practice, like anything. There's basically this thing called a tiny habits recipe, and it goes like this. After I do something, right? That's your prompt. I will, and there's your action. Then I will, and you have a celebration. And the one other core piece here is in BJ's Tiny Habits, he always ends with a celebration. And it's like this positive feeling, because you do have this positive feeling at the end when you've done something, you're more likely to do it again. So you're kind of like sealing it with like this positive vibe. So, and I know it sounds kind of weird, and believe me, I actually thought it was a little bit. I was like, what? Celebration? Okay. And I did it one day. He gives a lot of examples on like what he's done himself. And one of the habits that he has is called the Maui habit. And I will actually put a link below. But the Maui habit is basically after I get up and put my feet on the floor, I will say to myself, it's going to be a great day. And then you do a celebration. And for me, I basically did the same thing. When I open my eyes, when I wake up, I say to myself, it's going to be a great day. And then I get up and then I like basically smile and think positive thought. Like, yes, it's going to be a great day. And I smile. Some people do power pose, whatever like kind of is comfortable for you. One night I was like, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to remember to do that. And so the next morning I wake up and I did it, and I got up and walked around to the edge of my bed to go to the bathroom. And next to me was a chair that has had laundry, a pile of laundry that has been sitting there for 2 weeks, to the point that I was actually just pulling my clothes out of that pile to wear again. But there was still a big pile. And I decided to, as I'm leaving with this positive thought, I was like, oh, this laundry, which by the way, every time I walked into my room and out of my room, it was like poking at me, it's like taunting me. Me saying to myself, oh, you're so lazy. You can't even put away this laundry. My God, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you just do it? Look, it's so easy. Just do it. So it's like these microaggressions. And yet I would walk past this pile of laundry like I had been doing for 2 weeks. But that morning, after I did that positive habit and I walked past this pile of laundry, the tiny habit was still fresh in my mind. And it was like, well, do one little thing. What's the one thing that you can do? And I was like, I'm just going to take the one thing on top and put it away. Actually, no, I don't even think I said I put it away. I think I said fold it. And 15 minutes later, I folded every piece of clothing and put it away. And I was like in shock. I could not believe that I actually did it. And it all started with that positive habit that helped me through the day. And then the second thing was just giving myself some grace and saying, you don't have to do the whole thing. Just do one. Just do one little thing. And eventually I ended up doing all of it because it was so easy. I just needed to get started. I was motivated to put it away because I knew it was like bugging me all this time. And yet I continued to ignore it because it was overwhelming. I kept thinking, oh my God, this huge load of laundry and I'm just so tired. I just want to go to bed. It's one of the first moments where I realized the power of tiny habits. And ever since then, I've just like, whenever I struggle with something, I sort of revert back and go, okay, let's go tiny and let's go figure it out. When I do laundry, I just tell myself, well, I just need to fold one thing and I'm already taking the laundry out. So I just start folding it right away. And so it also, I figured out ways to make those tasks that are sort of like, who likes to fold? Well, I don't know. I guess some people like to fold laundry, but I don't particularly care for it, but there is something about just building habits around it that makes it much more manageable and actually in some ways enjoyable as well. It's definitely enjoyable once it's done. But even like if I don't get a chance to do all of it, like if I say, okay, I'm just going to fold one and then I do five, but then there's still a pile, it's like, and I walk away because I need to do something else. The goal is, okay, I did five. My goal was only to do one. So you need to celebrate the little wins because then when I come back, right, I haven't left with like sort of this negative thought that, oh, I didn't finish. Oh my gosh, you're so lazy. Just get it done. No, I didn't leave with any of that. Instead, I left with, okay, I'm going to get back to it because when I come back, I'm going to fold one thing. And then eventually I will end up folding all of it and it gets put away. Another tiny habit that I have that I built was I needed to be a little bit more active during the day. I wanted to figure out like, how do I get like exercise in without calling it exercise? How a lot of us, when we think of exercise, we think, okay, we're going to go for a walk or we're going to go to the gym. Or we're going to take a class or have a personal trainer's session. Those are all well and good. My habit was, how do I add activity to my day? Because I do go out for walks, but I need to have some weight bearing activity. So one of my tiny habits is actually doing squats. And when I make my coffee, I tell myself, oh, after you hit the brew button, I will do one squat. But now I do about 20 squats and then now I wait for the brewing time to finish, which is about a minute, I think. And I do squats and sometimes I do counter push-ups or whatever. Like I kind of change it up now. But I'm active when I'm making my coffee. And if I make 2, sometimes 3 cups of coffee in the day, then I've done squats and some sort of activity 3 times that I would not have done it in the past because now it's a habit that I've built. And again, it started off with like 1 squat and then it was like, okay, well, I guess I can do 10 squats. And now it's like I wait till it finishes brewing. And after I, get my cup of coffee, it's like I already have done a little bit of exercise. So that's been also helpful. The other one that BJ has was like flossing his teeth. He has a great example of like, he's like, oh, like most of us, right? Like we just sort of kind of not do it because, it's just one of those things. Like it's hard to like get a habit to do it. So he basically was like, okay, my habit is after I go to the bathroom, I will floss one tooth. I know it sounds ridiculous, like one tooth, come on. But really, once you just say, okay, well, I'm going to just do one. It's like, okay, I'll do the front one maybe. But once you start, you end up just doing your whole mouth. And so that was one of his habits was like floss one tooth. But you can see how it sort of builds onto your larger goals. And it's really about breaking it down. And if you tell yourself, I'm going to go work out 3 times a week and you can't even get to the workout, step back and ask yourself, well, what's the tiniest thing that's preventing me from getting there? And here's an example actually that might be helpful. My big thing was like, I wanted to go for a walk. And by the end of the day, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I still haven't left the house. I'm still in my pajamas. It's like, why can't I go for this walk? I mean, like my goal was like, I should be able to walk every day. I lived in a neighborhood where walking was easy. I had all the gear for it. The friction point for me was I just assumed like, oh, I'll go when I feel like it. Well, so many things come up. Oh, that laundry that, I've been walking past, I probably need to do, or I'm on the phone talking to a friend, or I'm already on my computer and I need to work. All these little things. But I knew that I wanted to go, I was motivated because I liked how it felt to go for a walk early in the morning. But for some reason, I wasn't able to consistently do it. And what I realized was I didn't do it because I wasn't dressed. Like I would still be in my pajamas. I'd go downstairs and be like in my pajamas, lounging about, doing my morning stuff. But then when it came to going out for a walk, I'm like, oh, I'm still in my pajamas. Well, let me just do this one other thing. Basically, I wasn't dressed to go out for a walk in the morning. So the one habit that I changed was after I got out of the bathroom, instead of going right to go downstairs to go to the kitchen to get my coffee and get my morning started, I would go left and go back into my closet in order to get dressed. Instead of I'm going to go right and to go do my normal thing, I would turn left. And it took a while. It took a few weeks to kind of consistently do it. And now I live in a different house, but our bedrooms are downstairs and our kitchen is upstairs. So now one of my habits is I just get dressed before I leave my bedroom. And I get dressed in clothes that I would use for either if I'm going to be working out that day or if I'm even just for a walk, whatever. I will wear those clothes. So the tiny habits just makes it easier, and you're just figuring out the right entry point into that goal, right? That habit. These small wins actually build momentum, and that's what BJ's research shows. And then it helps making habits stick. Finding those tiny things can really lead to big results over time. And now I pretty much go for a walk daily, sometimes twice a day. And then I also go to a personal trainer because I've also built I'm already dressed in the morning, so I have no excuse in being, well, I am always a few minutes late, still working on that one, but I get there, right? I consistently get there. So the other part, right, and that I've been doing this for my business and building tiny habits for content creation and really nailing down the different tasks that I need to do. So I've been working on that. I'll give you an update shortly. And instead of saying I'll do it later, or I really do ask myself, like, and actually that's one of my tiny habits is like my whoa habit, which I've shared before. After, I notice that I'm procrastinating, I say, whoa, what am I feeling? How is this thing that I'm telling myself the truth? I know that it's up to me. I have to own my progress. And then I need to assess and adjust to figure out what is it that I need to get done. Basically, just reassess the situation and then hopefully kind of pivot back to what I was supposed to be doing. If the task itself is like really hard, then you need to assess and maybe adjust it to be a little bit smaller. And I think something that I have to remind myself also, because a lot of times I'm just like, I just give up. And it's like, it's too much stuff going on. And even when times of overwhelm, other strategies is to just jot down, what is it that you're trying to get done? And then looking at the list, empty out your brain so that it's not just all bouncing around in there. And then once you have a list, you can kind of decide like, which one is the most important thing that I need to do? Not the top three, just the most important. And is that the thing that you need to be working on now? This was really, really hard for me. I think I'm finding this hard with content creation just because, again, we talked a little bit in a previous episode about, sort of the obstacles of getting there. So there's a lot of mindset shift and actual tactical things that I'm working through. And I'm hoping that some of these things are working. And again, I think the motivation is there in terms of I want this to happen. I want to work through this. So now I just have to work on the prompts. And I do know that I have the ability, but I think it's the prompting and also shifting a little bit of that mindset but I think being aware, which is part of the habit, is being aware that it's happening instead of like letting it go down this rabbit hole of procrastination, because there's some other things going on there. But I'm working on it. I'm definitely working on it. If you're thinking about like something that you've struggled with, we can build a habit right now, right? And here's the recipe, and maybe take out a piece of paper. But after you do what, I will, and then what is it that you want to do? And then I will celebrate. And actually in BJ's book, he does say you should practice this even before it happens. So then that way you can also tweak it before you get to the actual time that it has to be executed. And I know it sounds kind of silly. Like I remember practicing the getting dressed because I was already dressed, but like I was like, no, I should, like, that's the habit I want to try. So like in the morning, I was actually think about like, what did my morning look like? Okay, well, every morning after I get up, I go to the bathroom. And then when I leave the bathroom, I used to just go downstairs. Like that was what the norm was. That was the habit that I was in. And then I realized I'm like, oh, I just have to turn left. I have to turn left. I need to go back to the closet. And so during the day, even though it wasn't morning, but when I realized I was going to do this, I was like, all right, I'm going to let's pretend I'm here. I'm in the bathroom. Let's pretend it's morning. And then instead of going right, I'm going to go left to go to my closet. And I know it sounds silly, but it kind of helps you think through like, what are the obstacles that I'm going to face? Maybe this isn't the right habit. Maybe I have to do something else. In this case, it worked out for me, but that is how you build that habit. And if you've tried this, make sure to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what your little habit is that you're trying. And if you haven't already, and I always share my tracker of the habits I'm currently working on. I've just updated it so that it includes sort of like what the tiny habits recipe is. And, again, that's all based off of BJ Fogg's book, Tiny Habits. I am a certified tiny habits coach. Love to talk about tiny habits, what people are trying to work on, and love to help you achieve your goals. And just remember, it's like tiny thing at a time. You don't need to change everything all at once. Let's do it one little tiny habit at a time. This is Effie in Progress, and I'll see you next time, and maybe you'll share your habit with me. See you in the next one.